You will not marry my son. Not after the kind of life you lived in school, over my dead body.
The sun was unforgiving that afternoon. Linda wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, her fingers stained with dirt from the cassava farm. Her back ached from bending over rows of yam seedlings since dawn, but she couldn't stop. Not yet. Mrs. Adebayo had promised her 2,000 naira if she finished weeding the entire plot before evening. 2,000 naira. It would cover her textbook deposit for next term. Linda, water. Mrs. Adebayo called from under the mango tree, fanning herself with an old newspaper. Linda straightened up slowly, feeling her spine crack. She was only 17, but her body felt much older. She walked over, collected the plastic cup of water, and drank it in 3 long gulps. You're a strong girl, Mrs. Adebayo said, studying her. But why are you killing yourself like this? Where are your uncles? Linda's jaw tightened. They say education is wasted on a girl. Mrs. Adebayo shook her head sadly. Foolish men. Your parents would be ashamed of them. Linda said nothing. Her parents had been dead for 4 years now. Her mother from childbirth complications, her father from a motorcycle accident 6 months later. Since then, she had been passed between relatives like an unwanted package, until finally, no one wanted to carry the burden anymore. So she carried herself. Every morning before school, she worked on someone's farm. After school, she fetched water for neighbors. On weekends, she washed clothes or helped at the market. Slowly, painfully, she saved enough to stay in school. But now, secondary school was ending. And university? That felt like a dream too big for a girl like her. 3 months later, Linda sat on the cracked wooden bench outside the village internet cafe, staring at the printout in her hands. Her fingers trembled. Jam score, 287. Admission status, admitted, University of Lagos Business Administration. She had done it. Against every odd, every discouragement, every night she went to bed hungry, she had done it. But as the joy settled, reality crept in like cold water. Tuition, accommodation, textbooks, feeding, transport. She had nothing. Her uncle's voice echoed in her mind from last week. University? Are you mad? Do I look like a rich man? Go and find a husband, I beg. Linda folded the paper carefully and walked home in silence, her excitement dissolving into a familiar heaviness. That night, she knelt beside her mat and prayed like she used to when her mother was alive. God, I've come this far. Please don't let it end here. 2 weeks later, Linda was sitting in front of Mr. Charles in a cold, air-conditioned office in the city. She had come to drop off some documents for a woman who knew someone who knew him, a businessman who helped students. He was in his mid-50s with a round belly, soft hands, and an unsettling smile. So you're the brilliant girl everyone is talking about, he said, leaning back in his leather chair. Unilag, Business Administration. Impressive. Thank you, sir, Linda said quietly, her hands folded tightly on her lap. But you have no money. She swallowed. No, sir. He tapped his fingers on the desk, watching her closely. I can pay your tuition. All 4 years. Accommodation too. Feeding money every month. Linda's heart leapt. Sir, thank you, sir, But he interrupted smoothly, I don't do charity. The air seemed to thicken. I'll need you to keep me company. When I'm in Lagos. When I'm lonely. You understand? Linda's stomach dropped. She understood perfectly. She looked down at her worn sandals, at her faded dress, at the gap between who she wanted to be and who survival was asking her to become. Her mother's voice whispered in her memory, Linda, never sell yourself. But her mother was dead, and Linda was alive, barely. I'll think about it, sir, she whispered. Mr. Charles smiled. Don't think too long. School resumes in 2 weeks. Linda didn't sleep that night. She sat on the balcony of the small room she rented, staring at the stars, crying silently. She thought about going back to the village, about forgetting university, about accepting that some dreams weren't meant for girls like her. But then she thought about everything she had survived, every meal she skipped, every bone-tired evening, every mocking word from her uncles. If she gave up now, it would all be for nothing. The next morning, Linda called Mr. Charles. I'll do it, she said, her voice flat. There was a pause, then his low chuckle. Smart girl. I'll send my driver to pick you up this weekend. When the call ended, Linda sat on the floor and cried until there were no tears left. She had chosen survival, but she wondered if she had lost something else. The first time Dayo came to pick her up, Linda almost didn't get in the car. She stood outside the campus gate, watching the sleek black Toyota Camry pull up slowly. The windows were tinted dark. Everything about it screamed money, the kind of money that didn't belong in her world. The driver stepped out. He was a man in his late 40s, average height, with tired eyes and a neat shirt tucked into simple trousers. He didn't smile. He just nodded. "Linda?" His voice was calm, professional. "Yes," she whispered. Dayo. Mr. Charles sent me." He opened the back door for her. Linda hesitated, her legs refusing to move. A group of students walked past, laughing loudly. None of them knew what she was about to do. None of them would understand. She got in. The car smelled like leather and expensive air freshener. Dayo closed the door gently and returned to the driver's seat. He didn't say a word as he started the engine and drove off. Linda stared out the window, her hands clenched in her lap. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. 20 minutes later, they pulled into the underground parking lot of a tall, glass hotel in Victoria Island. Dayo parked, turned off the engine, and finally spoke. "5th floor. Room 507. Linda nodded stiffly and got out. She didn't look back, but she could feel his eyes on her as she walked toward the elevator. Mr. Charles was waiting in the room, a bottle of wine already open on the table. He smiled when she entered, the same oily smile from his office. "Linda, you came." She forced herself to nod. "Relax," he said, pouring her a glass. "We're just going to talk." But they both knew that was a lie. It became a routine. Every 2 weeks, sometimes once a week, Dayo would come to pick her up. Always the same car. Always the same silence. Linda began to recognize the sound of the engine before she even saw the car. Her stomach would twist into knots. She would put on her best dress, the ones Mr. Charles bought for her, and paint a fake smile on her face. Dayo never asked questions, never made comments. But his eyes always held something. Pity, maybe. Or judgment. Linda couldn't tell, and she didn't want to know. One evening, after dropping her back at campus, Dayo spoke for the first time beyond directions. "You're a student here?" Linda froze, her hand on the door handle. "Yes. What are you studying?" "Business administration." He nodded slowly. "That's good. Education is important." There was a long, uncomfortable pause. "My son is studying engineering," he added quietly. "At Covenant University." Linda didn't know what to say. She mumbled a quick, "That's nice," and got out of the car as fast as she could. But that night, lying in her hostel bed, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Dayo had a son in university, a son who probably had a mother who loved him, a father who worked honestly to pay his fees. Not like her. Shame burned in her chest. The months blurred together. Linda threw herself into her studies like a woman possessed. If she could just focus on her grades, on her future, maybe she could forget the present. She became the best student in her department. She joined the debate club. She volunteered at campus events. Anything to fill the emptiness. But every time Dayo's car appeared, reality came crashing back. One Saturday afternoon, she got into the car and noticed Dayo looked different. His face was drawn, his eyes red. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked before she could stop herself. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, surprised she had spoken. "I'm fine," he said quietly. Then, after a pause, "My wife is in the hospital." Linda's chest tightened. "I'm sorry." He nodded but said nothing more. The rest of the drive was silent, but Linda felt something shift. Dayo wasn't just Mr. Charles' driver anymore. He was a man, a husband, a father. And she was the girl he drove to see a man who wasn't her husband. The shame nearly choked her. Final year. Linda's final exams came faster than she expected. 4 years of lectures, sleepless nights, and silent shame, all leading to this. She passed with a second-class upper. The day she got her result, she stood in front of the notice board and stared at her name until the letters blurred. Other students cheered around her, hugging and taking pictures. Linda just stood there, numb. She had done it. She had graduated. But at what cost? That evening, Mr. Charles called her. "I heard the good news. I'm proud of you." Linda's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir. So, when can I see you? To celebrate?" Her hands trembled. "Sir, I think I need to focus on finding a job now." There was a pause. Then his voice turned cold. "Linda, don't forget who paid for everything." "I'm not forgetting, sir," she said quickly, her voice cracking. I need to move forward." Another long silence. "Fine," he said finally. "But don't think you can just walk away." The line went dead. Linda sat on her hostel bed, staring at the phone. Then she made a decision. She blocked his number. She deleted every message. She threw away the dresses he bought. And when Dayo's car appeared at the gate 2 weeks later, Linda didn't go down. She watched from her window as the car waited for 20 minutes, then drove away. She never saw Dayo again, or so she thought. 1 year later, Linda stood in front of the mirror in her small self-contained apartment in Yaba, adjusting her blazer. She had lost weight, not from hunger this time, but from the constant hustle of building a new life. After graduation, she had taken on 3 freelance jobs while applying everywhere. Finally, a marketing firm in Acadia gave her a chance. The pay wasn't much, but it was clean money. Money she earned with her mind, not her body. Money that didn't make her cry at night. She grabbed her bag and headed out. Today was her first day as a full staff member after 6 months of contract work. A small promotion, but to Linda, it felt like freedom. Linda, this is Andrew. He'll be heading the new digital marketing unit. Linda looked up from her desk and her breath caught. The man standing beside her supervisor was tall, dark-skinned, with kind eyes and an easy smile. He wore a simple blue shirt and black trousers, nothing flashy, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. "Nice to meet you," Andrew said, extending his hand. "Nice to meet you too," Linda replied, shaking it. His grip was warm and firm. "I hear you're one of our best," he said with a smile. Linda felt her cheeks heat up. "I just try my best." "Well, I look forward to working with you." As he walked away, Linda's colleague, Basola, leaned over with a grin. "Girl, that man is fine. And he's single-o." Linda rolled her eyes. "A beg, let me focus on my work." But for the rest of the day, she couldn't help stealing glances at Andrew's office. Over the next few weeks, Andrew and Linda worked closely on a new campaign. He was patient, smart, and never talked down to her. He asked for her opinions and actually listened. One evening, as everyone else had left, they were still in the conference room, surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. "I think we should change the tagline," Linda said, tapping her pen on the table. Andrew looked at the board, then at her. "You know what? You're right. Your instinct is better than mine." Linda blinked. "Really? Really?" He smiled. "You're brilliant, Linda. You should trust yourself more." Something in his voice made her heart skip. It wasn't flirtation. It was genuine respect. She wasn't used to that. 3 months later, Andrew asked her out for lunch. "Just lunch," he said quickly when he saw her hesitation. "No pressure. I enjoy talking to you." Linda agreed, her stomach full of butterflies. They went to a small buka in Acadia, the kind with plastic chairs, and Mama put calling everyone my Pekin. Andrew ordered pounded yam and egusi, and they talked for 2 hours, about work, about dreams, about life. "So what made you go into marketing?" Andrew asked, scooping a piece of meat. Linda paused. She couldn't tell him the whole truth. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I just needed a way to stand on my own," she said carefully. Andrew nodded. "I respect that. A lot of people just want quick money these days. But you work hard. I see it." Linda looked down at her plate, emotions swirling in her chest. If only he knew. "What about you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Why marketing? Honestly, my dad wanted me to be an engineer like him, but I failed engineering in year 2. He laughed. "Best failure of my life. I found what I actually loved." "Your dad wasn't angry?" Andrew shrugged. He was disappointed at first, but he came around. He's a good man. Tough but fair. Linda smiled, but inside a small ache formed. She wondered what it was like to have a father who cared. Their friendship grew into something deeper. Andrew started walking her to the bus stop after work. He brought her lunch when she was too busy to eat. He remembered small things, like how she took her tea with no sugar, or how she always wore a silver bracelet her mother gave her. One evening, 6 months after they met, Andrew drove her home after a late meeting. As they sat in the car outside her apartment, he turned to her. "Linda, I need to tell you something." Her heart raced. "Okay, I like you. A lot. And am not good at hiding it anymore." He laughed nervously. "I know we work together and maybe this is unprofessional, but I can't help it. You're the most genuine person I've ever met." Linda's eyes filled with tears. She didn't feel genuine. She felt stained. "Andrew, You don't have to answer now," he said quickly. "Just think about it." But Linda didn't need to think. For the first time in years, someone saw her as more than a transaction. More than a poor girl who sold herself to survive. He saw her as a woman worth loving. "Yes," she whispered. Andrew blinked. Yes, I like you too." His smile was so wide, so pure, that Linda almost believed she deserved it. 1 year later, the restaurant was dimly lit, with soft music playing in the background. Linda wore a simple yellow dress Andrew had complimented once before. She was nervous, though she didn't know why. They had been dating for a year now. A beautiful, peaceful year. Andrew had met her friends. She had met his colleagues. Everything felt normal. But tonight, Andrew seemed different. Distracted. "Are you okay?" Linda asked. Yeah. Just thinking." After dessert, Andrew stood up suddenly. Linda frowned. "Where are you?" He walked around the table and knelt down. Linda's hands flew to her mouth. "Linda," Andrew began, his voice shaking slightly, "this past year has been the best of my life. You're strong, kind, smart, and you make me want to be better. I know you've been through things you don't talk about, and that's okay. I don't need to know your past to know I want to be in your future." Tears streamed down Linda's face. Andrew pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was a simple, beautiful ring. "Will you marry me?" Linda couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. All she could do was nod over and over as sobs racked her body. Andrew slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into his arms. "Thank you," she whispered into his chest. "Thank you." For the first time in her life, Linda felt like God had finally answered her prayers. She had been forgiven. She had been chosen. She was loved. The days leading up to the family introduction were a blur of nerves and preparation. Linda must have changed her outfit 15 times. She finally settled on a modest, elegant navy blue dress with a cream headscarf. Conservative, respectable, the kind of outfit that said, "I'm a good woman. I'm worthy of your son." Andrew's mother had already given her blessing over the phone. A warm, cheerful woman who seemed thrilled that her son had finally found someone. But meeting the whole family in person? That was different. "You're going to love them," Andrew kept saying as they drove toward his family home in Lekki. "My dad can be a bit serious, but once he warms up to you, he's great. My sisters will probably interrogate you, but it's all love." Linda nodded, gripping her handbag tightly. Her palms were sweating. "And if anything feels uncomfortable, just squeeze my hand. We'll take a break, okay?" She managed a small smile. "Okay." But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. The house was beautiful. A modern 2-story building with a well-manicured lawn and tasteful exterior. Nothing too flashy, but clearly the home of a comfortable, respectable family. As they pulled into the driveway, Linda saw people moving around inside through the large windows. Her heart hammered in her chest. "Ready?" Andrew asked, turning off the engine. "Ready," she lied. He came around and opened her door, offering his hand. She took it, drawing strength from his calm presence. They walked to the front door together. Andrew knocked twice, then pushed it open. "We're here," he called out. "Andrew, my son." A plump, cheerful woman rushed toward them, arms wide. This had to be his mother. She pulled Andrew into a tight hug, then turned to Linda with a beaming smile. "And you must be Linda." "Oh, my dear, you're even more beautiful than in the pictures." Linda smiled shyly. "Thank you, Ma. Come inside. Everyone is waiting." The living room was spacious and bright, filled with family members. Andrew's 2 sisters, their husbands, a few cousins, his grandmother in the corner, and then Linda's eyes landed on the man standing near the dining area. Her blood turned to ice. Time seemed to stop. It was Dayo. The same Dayo. The same tired eyes. The same quiet, composed expression. He was holding a glass of water, talking to someone, but the moment he turned and saw her, his entire body went rigid. Their eyes locked. Recognition flashed across his face like lightning. His jaw tightened. The glass trembled slightly in his hand. Linda couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred at the edges. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't possible. "Linda?" Andrew's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you okay?" She couldn't answer. Her legs felt like water. "Everyone, this is Linda," Andrew announced proudly, his arm around her waist. "Linda, this is my dad. I need to use the restroom," Linda blurted out, her voice too high, too sharp. Andrew blinked, surprised. "Oh, sure. It's just down the—" "I'll show her," Dayo said suddenly, his voice low and hard. Everyone turned to look at him, sensing the strange tension. "Dad, I can show her," Andrew started. "I said I'll show her." Dayo's tone left no room for argument. Linda's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Dayo set down his glass and walked toward the hallway. He didn't look at her, but his meaning was clear. "Follow me." She had no choice. Dayo led her down the hallway in silence. He stopped at a door, opened it, not the bathroom, but a small study, and gestured for her to enter. Linda stepped inside, her whole body shaking. Dayo closed the door behind them and stood there for a long moment, his back to her. His shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. When he finally turned around, his face was a mask of controlled anger. You were that girl, he said quietly. The one I used to pick up. For Mr. Charles. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Sir, please. Does my son know? No. Her voice broke. No, he doesn't. Dayo let out a bitter laugh and ran a hand over his face. Of course he doesn't. Because if he did, he wouldn't be here introducing you to his family. Mr. Dayo, please. Linda's tears were falling freely now. Please let me explain. Explain what? His voice rose slightly. That you were a runs girl? That you were sleeping with a married man for money while my son thinks you're some innocent, hardworking woman? I was innocent. Linda cried. I was desperate. I had no parents, no money, no way to go to school. I didn't want that life, but I had no choice. There's always a choice, Dayo said coldly. Easy for you to say. Linda shot back, her grief turning to anger. You had a job. You had a family. You don't know what it's like to be a girl with nothing. No family, no help, no hope. I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it because I wanted to survive. Dayo stared at her, his jaw working. Linda wiped her face roughly. I'm not that girl anymore. I worked hard. I finished school. I got a job. I built a new life. Andrew met me after all of that. He fell in love with who I am now, not who I was forced to be. But you're still lying to him, Dayo said quietly. You're building a marriage on a lie. Linda's shoulders slumped. I know, and it eats at me every single day. But if I tell him, he'll leave me. And I can't, her voice cracked. I can't lose him. He's the only good thing that's ever happened to me. Dayo looked at her for a long, painful moment. His expression was unreadable. Finally, he spoke. I drove you for almost 4 years. Every time I picked you up, I saw the shame on your face. I saw a girl who hated herself. And I felt sorry for you. He paused. But feeling sorry for you then doesn't mean I'll let you marry my son now. Linda's knees nearly gave out. Please. Sir, please. I won't say anything today, Dayo said, his voice firm. But I'm not giving my blessing. And Andrew won't marry without it. He walked to the door, opened it, and looked back at her one last time. Clean yourself up. They're waiting. Then he left. Linda collapsed against the wall, her body shaking with silent sobs. Everything was falling apart. Linda returned to the living room with swollen eyes hidden behind a forced smile. She claimed it was allergies. Andrew's mother fussed over her, offering antihistamines and cold water. His sisters chatted excitedly about wedding plans. But Dayo sat in the corner, silent as stone, his eyes fixed on some distant point. And Andrew, sweet, trusting Andrew, held her hand and whispered, See? I told you they'd love you. Linda wanted to die. 2 days later, Andrew came to Linda's apartment, his face troubled. The moment she opened the door, she knew. My dad wants to talk to you, he said quietly. Alone. Linda's heart sank. Andrew. He didn't say why. But he's been acting strange since the introduction. Did something happen? No, Linda lied quickly. Nothing happened. Andrew studied her face, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Linda, if there's something I should know. There's nothing, she said, forcing herself to meet his gaze. I promise. But her promise tasted like ash in her mouth. The meeting was set for the next evening at a quiet restaurant. Dayo was already seated when Linda arrived, still in her work clothes, exhausted from a sleepless night. He didn't stand when she approached, didn't greet her, just gestured to the chair across from him. Linda sat, her hands folded tightly on the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I've been thinking, Dayo finally said, his voice low. About what you said. About survival. About choices. Linda remained silent, afraid to hope. My wife, Andrew's mother, she comes from a good family. Educated. Respected. When I married her, I was just a driver. Her family rejected me. Said I wasn't good enough. That I was beneath her. Linda looked up, surprised. Dayo's jaw tightened. Her father refused to attend our wedding. Told her she was throwing her life away. It nearly destroyed her. He paused. But she chose me anyway. And I spent every day of our marriage trying to prove I was worth that choice. His eyes met Linda's. And for the first time, she saw something other than anger. She saw pain. So I understand what it means to be judged for your circumstances, he continued. I understand what it means to fight for a chance. Linda's eyes filled with tears. Sir, but, he interrupted, his voice hardening, I also know what it means to build a marriage on truth. My wife knew exactly who I was, where I came from, what I had, and she chose me anyway. He leaned forward. You're asking my son to choose you without knowing the truth. That's not fair. That's not love. That's fear. I know, Linda whispered, tears streaming down her face. I know, and I'm so sorry. But I can't tell him. I can't lose him. Then you've already lost him, Dayo said quietly. Because a marriage built on lies will crumble. Maybe not today. Maybe not next year. But eventually, the truth always comes out. I'm not a heartless man, Linda. I see that you love my son. I see that you've changed your life. But I'm his father. And I have to protect him. So you'll tell him? Linda asked, her voice muffled. No, Dayo said, and Linda's head snapped up. You will. Sir, please. You have 1 week, Dayo said firmly. Tell him the truth. All of it. If he still chooses you after that, I won't stand in your way. But if you don't tell him, I will. And trust me, it will be better coming from you. He stood, pulled out his wallet, and placed some bills on the table. 1 week, Linda. Then he walked away, leaving her sitting there, drowning in despair. 5 days later. Linda couldn't do it. She tried. God knows she tried. She rehearsed the words 1,000 times. Opened her mouth 100 times. But every time she looked at Andrew's trusting face, the words died in her throat. How do you tell the man you love that you're not who he thinks you are? How do you destroy the one good thing in your life with your own hands? On the 5th night, Andrew showed up at her door with takeout and a bright smile. I know you've been stressed with work, he said, kissing her forehead. So I brought your favorite, jollof rice and chicken from that place in Suralere. Linda burst into tears. Hey, Andrew pulled her into his arms, alarmed. What's wrong? Talk to me. I can't, she sobbed into his chest. I can't lose you. Lose me? Linda, what are you talking about? You're not going to lose me. You don't know that, she cried. You don't know. Know what? Andrew pulled back to look at her face. Linda, you're scaring me. What's going on? This was it. The moment. She had to tell him. But then her phone rang. It was Dayo. Her blood ran cold. The week wasn't up yet. Why was he calling? Answer it, Andrew said quietly, watching her face. Linda's hands shook as she picked up the phone. Hello, Linda. Dayo's voice was strained. It's my wife. She's had a stroke. We're at the hospital. Andrew needs to be here. Oh my God, Linda breathed. Is she? Just tell him to come. Now. The line went dead. Linda looked at Andrew, who was already grabbing his keys, having heard enough. Let's go, he said. The hospital. Andrew's mother lay in the ICU, unconscious, machines beeping around her. The doctor said it was serious, a blood clot in her brain. The next 48 hours were critical. Andrew sat by her bedside, holding her hand, his face stricken. His sisters were there, crying quietly. Dayo stood by the window, his back rigid, his fists clenched. Linda stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in their grief. Later that night, as Andrew dozed in the chair beside his mother's bed, Dayo found Linda in the waiting area. He looked 10 years older, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion and fear. She's the reason I kept driving for Mr. Charles, he said quietly, sitting down beside her. Even after I saw what he was. What he did. My wife had medical bills, diabetes, high blood pressure. The money from my regular taxi work wasn't enough. Mr. Charles paid well. So I drove. I closed my eyes and I drove. Linda looked at him, understanding washing over her. We all made compromises to survive, Dayo continued, his voice breaking. I judged you for yours while pretending mine were different. But they weren't. We both did what we had to do for the people we love. He turned to look at her, tears streaming down his weathered face. I'm sorry, Linda, for the things I said, for making you feel like you were less than human. Linda couldn't speak. She just reached out and squeezed his hand. They sat there in silence, two people bound by shame, by survival, by love. 3 days later, Andrew's mother woke up. Weak but alive. The family wept with relief. Andrew hugged his father for the first time in years. His sisters thanked God. And Linda stood in the background, watching, grateful. That evening, as Andrew walked Linda to her car, he stopped and turned to her. I need to tell you something, he said. Linda's heart stopped. Did Dayo tell him? My dad pulled me aside earlier, Andrew continued. He said he was wrong about you. That he judged you too quickly. He said you're a strong woman, and I'm lucky to have you. Tears filled Linda's eyes. Andrew. And he gave us his blessing, Andrew said, his voice thick with emotion. For the wedding. Linda covered her mouth, sobs breaking free. Andrew pulled her into his arms. I don't know what happened between you two, but whatever it was, it's over now. We can move forward. Linda clung to him, crying into his shoulder. She knew she should tell him. She knew the truth was still there, waiting. But maybe, just maybe, some truths didn't need to be spoken. Maybe redemption didn't require confession. Maybe love could exist alongside buried shame. Or maybe she was just a coward. Either way, she had been given a second chance. And she wasn't going to waste it. 6 months later, The small church in Acacia was decorated with white lilies and soft golden ribbons. Nothing extravagant, just intimate and beautiful, exactly as Linda had wanted. She stood in the tiny bride's room, staring at herself in the mirror. The wedding dress was simple, elegant, with lace sleeves that covered her arms. Her makeup was light. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like a bride, but inside, she still felt like that girl in the back of Dayo's car. "You look beautiful," Bisola said, adjusting Linda's veil. "Andrew is going to cry when he sees you." Linda managed a smile, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. There was a soft knock on the door. "Linda? It's me." Her heart skipped. That was Dayo's voice. Bisola glanced at her, confused. "Should I?" "It's okay," Linda said quietly. "Let him in." Bisola opened the door. Dayo stood there in a well-fitted navy suit, looking more tired than usual but dignified. He held a small box in his hands. "Can I have a moment with her?" he asked Bisola gently. Bisola looked at Linda, who nodded. "It'll be right outside," Bisola said, squeezing Linda's hand before leaving. The door closed. Silence filled the small room. Dayo stepped forward slowly, as if approaching something fragile. "You look beautiful," he said finally. "Thank you," Linda whispered. He held out the box. "This belonged to my wife. She wanted Andrew's bride to have it." Linda opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, simple but clearly treasured. Dayo took the bracelet and gently fastened it around her wrist. His hands were steady, but his eyes were wet. "I was wrong, Linda," he said, his voice thick. "Wrong to judge you. Wrong to think your past defined your future. I'm proud to call you my daughter." Linda couldn't hold it in anymore. She stepped forward and hugged him, sobbing into his shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Dayo held her for a moment, patting her back awkwardly like a father would. When they pulled apart, he wiped his eyes quickly and cleared his throat. "Now fix your makeup," he said with a small smile. "You're getting married in 10 minutes, and my son is already pacing like a madman out there." Linda laughed through her tears. Dayo moved toward the door, then stopped and looked back. "Linda?" "Yes, sir?" "Welcome to the family." The ceremony. The church was small but full, colleagues from work, a few of Linda's friends from university, Andrew's family, and some neighbors. And in the back row, wearing dark glasses and a simple dress, sat Mrs. Adebayo, the woman whose farm Linda used to weed for 2,000 naira. She had traveled all the way from the village when she heard Linda was getting married. When Linda walked down the aisle, holding a small bouquet of white roses, the church fell silent. Andrew stood at the altar, and just as Bisola predicted, tears streamed down his face the moment he saw her. Dayo sat in the front row next to his wife, who was still recovering but insisted on being there. She squeezed her husband's hand and whispered, "She's perfect." Dayo nodded, unable to speak. The pastor's voice was warm and steady. "Marriage is not just the union of two people. It is the union of two stories, two pasts, two presents, and one future." Linda's hands trembled as Andrew held them. "Do you, Andrew, take Linda to be your lawfully wedded wife? To love her, honor her in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," Andrew said firmly, his voice full of conviction. The pastor turned to Linda. "And do you, Linda, take Andrew to be your lawfully wedded husband? To love him, honor him in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, as long as you both shall live?" "I do," she said, her voice strong and clear. Andrew's smile was brighter than the sun. "By the power vested in me," the pastor declared, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Andrew pulled Linda close and kissed her softly, tenderly, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. The small church erupted in applause. The reception. The reception was held in a modest hall nearby. There was jollof rice, fried rice, chicken, salad, and a small two-tier cake.